All right, well, let's get started. Again, thank you for being here. We're so excited to have each of you. We have an amazing set of panelists tonight, people from the top consulting firms, coaches with a ton of expertise that they're excited to share with you. And it looks like we have a bunch of attendees in the audience as well from top universities, top companies that are interested in breaking into consulting. And we're really excited to cover case interview best practices tonight. Just a couple of logistics. Please ask your questions in the chat. Our panelists will be moderating the chat, as well as Amelia from our team. We will also want to make sure that you're respectful and supportive of others, in terms of chat, maintenance and all of that. And then finally sign up for Leland so that you can always find out about our free events, our free resources, and all the initiatives we're doing here. We're always bringing new coaches onto the site, and we want to keep you updated. All right, so for our agenda tonight, we'll go through a quick round of introductions. We'll do a quick overview on Leland. This is by no means a sales pitch, just that many of you, this is your first time experiencing Leland and what we have to offer. So we'll do a quick overview, and then we'll dive into the bulk of the conversation, which will be our consulting panel. You'll get to hear tips and best practices, exclusive insights from our panelists, and then we'll dive into breakout rooms. Each of the coaches here tonight have prepared a workshop related to an element of the consulting case. And so they'll be going over those with each of you. You'll join the room and get that help. And then we'll end the event. So really looking forward to the next 53 minutes that we have together, and hope that you get a ton of value out of our presentation tonight. All right, well, to kick us off, want to introduce you to some of the Leland team members. I'm Erica. I'm the head of experience here, also on the founding team of Leland, and I am just super excited to meet each of you if we haven't met already. We also have joining us John, our CEO, and then Amelia Charles, who runs content and marketing here at Leland, and she will be monitoring the chat. She'll be responding to your questions, and if you see her name pop up, please feel free to give her a warm hello. Now I'd like to introduce each of you to our incredible panelists. This is a huge opportunity for each of you to learn from the best of the best. These folks come from the best professions all over the world. Lola is joining us from somewhere very late into the night. She'll tell you that when she introduces herself, but really just want to express our gratitude for all they're going to share with us tonight and the time they made to be here. So with that, I'll pass it over to you, Ben, and then each of you can introduce yourself, and then we'll dive into the content.
All right, great to meet everybody. I think we're obviously going in increasing order of exceptionalness, starting with me. So originally from Queens, New York, went to WashU for undergrad, and then worked at McKinsey for a couple of years afterwards. Did a lot of social public sector work too. So have really enjoyed my time there, actually, and then moved to work in the Chicago mayor's office, and then ultimately to Stanford for MBA and a few things after that. So excited to meet everybody and looking forward to it.
Hey everyone, I'm Lola. As Eric alluded to, I'm currently based in London, so a bit of a late one, but was really excited to chat with you all. I also was at McKinsey for a few years, based in the Philadelphia and New York offices, and spent a lot of time working abroad for McKinsey. So traveled across 5 continents during my time there, which sort of led me to wanting to make a move full time. So now I'm currently in product management. I work with Stripe in the UK, but really excited to talk about all things case prep and McKinsey. I'll pass it to Jeremy.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining tonight. I am Jeremy. I am a former Bain consultant. I went to Bain after graduating at WashU. Ben and I both WashU grads. I spent 4 years at Bain across Dallas and Boston with a break for my MBA at MIT Sloan. And now I do a number of things, including coaching through Leland and coaching on other different types of things as well. So really thrilled to be here.
Hi, everyone. Excited to meet you tonight. I'm Shreya Jain. I grew up in Bangalore, and so was an international when I came to the States and went to Georgia Tech for my undergrad, studied industrial engineering. Worked at Bain Atlanta after school for 3 years. And then now I'm currently heading marketing at an early stage startup in the mental health space. Currently live in Brooklyn, New York, and this year I'll be pursuing my MBA. But excited to chat all about case prep.
Hi, everyone. I'm John. Nice to meet you all. And I'm from Orange County, California. Went to Cal for my undergrad, studied chemical and nuclear engineering, and the natural next step was consulting. So I worked in at a boutique firm, did my MBA at Yale, and then interned at Bain, and then worked full-time at BCG. So excited to meet you guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much. As you can tell, incredible bunch, extremely qualified. We're super excited for what they're going to share tonight. And again, really appreciate their time and all that they're going to share tonight. So with that, we'd love to get to know you all as well. Everyone in the audience, feel free to answer in the chat where you're attending college or working right now. That could be location, company, school. And then where you're at in terms of the management consulting recruiting process. I've heard from several of you that you're in undergrad, could be in your freshman year, all the way to in the thick of recruiting right now, or hoping to be an experienced hire in the future. So let's see where y'all are coming from. Sweet. This is awesome to see. Tons of folks calling from all over the world and great majors. This is awesome. Keep them coming. We love to see that representation. 1 a.m. Good for you. Happy to have you here. We'll keep things exciting. All right, let's jump to the next slide, but feel free to use the chat. It'll be open all night and we'd love to hear from you. Now we'll move over to the Leland overview. Let's make sure. Perfect. We are Leland, and we are a coaching marketplace connecting ambitious individuals like each of you with coaches you need to succeed professionally and in your educational pursuits. So we have tons of the top companies, universities represented by our coaches. And our coaches have helped, over 3,000 clients over the past 26 years land top jobs, top internships, and get into really competitive grad school programs. You heard from 5 of our coaches tonight already, and they are on the platform connecting with individuals like each of you to help you reach your goals. So we're excited. We're building this company with each of you in mind and want to help make sure to be that support you need to receive the desired outcome you're looking for. What we do here at Leland is one-on-one coaching. That's the bread and butter of everything we do. We really believe in the power of personalized coaching relationships, getting the targeted and tailored help that you need to succeed in your goals. Next, we have small group classes. We'll go over those in a few. We actually have 2 of our coaches on the call tonight hosting a bunch of upcoming classes. So we'll give you a moment to sign up for those. We're always dropping new classes across resume reviews, admissions essays, case prep, and more. Classes are a great way to get access to quality coaching and get the support you need to get started as you're working towards your goals. And then finally, college club partnerships. We offer discount codes to college students through their clubs. We'll do a free event for your club. So if you are a club president or in contact with one or a member of a club, feel free to reach out. Amelia will drop that club partnerships link in the chat and sign up, and we'll get you onboarded so you can get that access. Now that you know what Leland is, again, we want to bring up this discount code opportunity so that each of you after tonight's call can book time with these coaches and get that tailored one-on-one case prep you need. So I'll leave this up for a second. Feel free to scan it, sign up, and we will send you over a discount code. One thing I want to mention is if you've already signed up for Leland and you've already been on the platform before tonight, just email support@joinleland.com and I will send you the $25 so you can access it as well. A great place to use your coaching discount is towards small group classes. I put these 4 up because they are all consulting relevant. They are all scheduled for the next week. and we'd love for you to secure a spot. We have limited spots in each of them. So case interview one-on-one, so exhibits, mastering the case, personal behavioral interview class, and then a Bain specific case class as well. So feel free to use that $25 discount towards one-on-one coaching and also these classes as well. And we'll get these sent out to each of you too. All right, well, I think with that, let's move on to our consulting panel. We've put a lot of prep into this night, and we want to make sure that the majority of the time we spend together is actually getting the advice and help you need as you're going through consulting prep and practice. So let's get started. One thing I will say before we dive into all of the content we've created for tonight is that we all know that consulting and case interviewing, case prepping is challenging, and we know each of you are kind of going through it. We want to say we're proud of you and that you can do it, and we're here to support. So everything we've planned tonight was created with the goal of making this, daunting process seem a lot more friendly and easy to navigate. So with that, I'll pass it over to you, Ben, if you want to kick us off and tell us about 5 core skills in case interviewing.
I was born for this, Erica. Thank you. I think the main things to think about, a lot can get lost in the casing process, and it can honestly feel overwhelming a lot of the time. But I honestly think you can distill a lot of what makes a great case, or someone who's good at giving cases, really just like a set of core skills I think they can build on. So the first of which is the natural first step in a case, but it's also probably one of, if not the most important skill for many interviewing. And that's just setting up a logical structure that builds off the information that you were given and lays it out in a way that's really user-friendly for the person at the other side. You have to kind of imagine your interviewer is actually a client and someone you'd want to be talking to. So just spitting out an answer or two is really never the approach. It's really more about like laying out like structured optionality so that we can sift through the weeds together. Secondly is typically after you set up an initial framework, what really becomes the skill set is more around kind of like forensics, or being a little bit more of a scientist. You build a hypothesis based on the information given, and as you get more and you learn more, you perpetually refine that hypothesis, and you're walking your interviewer along the entire way. And this really extends to the math portions of the cases too. Very, very often cases are segmented into kind of a verbal quant in people's heads, and they see mental math as totally a different skill. In many ways it requires some sort of like general calculation and something a little bit more precise than stringing the right words together. But being equally able to walk your client through your structure is perhaps even more pronounced when it comes to walking through the actual analysis you're doing in your head. Particularly because if you're providing an answer on that front, oftentimes it's a number or a sizing of some kind. That can't just be done by saying the thing. You actually have to provide the inner workings of your brain and your processes that you're going through in order for the client to feel like that you're actually making some sense here. And then I think like the last two skills, throughout the entire interview, like you have to remember the other person on the line here is a human being, and perhaps even more importantly, they've often done these cases, not just given them, but like they worked on them as extended projects for long periods of time. So it in many ways you're not really going to give them new ideas. So you really want to bring them along with your thinking and the way that you're operating. But the way that you're actually like thinking about like how do you actually build a recommendation here, but you're doing so in a way kind of with a felt understanding that like this is a rapport building exercise as it would be on the ground with your client too. And then the last thing, just succinctly, is delivering a concise recommendation that also factors in and brings the kind of like ties a bow on the entire case process, where you incorporate, there's no adhesion to your initial framework per se. But you're incorporating all the information that you've been given so far and providing like a best guess as to what you would do with your next step. You can bring this along in a holistic way by analyzing risks, et cetera, that might come along with your decision. But ultimately, these are the 5 main things. If you were to get 90th percentile on all of these, you'd be in all these firms. So these are the things to master.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben, for kicking us off and giving us that foundation. Now let's ask some panel questions. And then we'll dive into the breakout rooms. Okay, so to kick things off, I always like to start on the lighter side before we get into like the technical nitty gritty. So let's go around the room. I'd love each of our panelists to give us one line of their best tip to helping future aspiring consultants stand out during the case portion. So let's go, John, and then pass it over to Shreya, and then we can do Jeremy, Ben, and then Lola.
Thanks. Yeah, I actually loved what Ben was saying about building a collaborative rapport. And I just want to highlight that and call out what it sometimes looks like, or a way you can do that is often, obviously you're talking through everything out loud, but bringing in sort of, whether it's personal anecdotes or experiences from your work experience, from your life, that sort of add a different flavor to the case. I'll just say, like, usually the interviewer is giving this case maybe 10, 15 times in a row. They want to see what is your personal take on it. What can you bring to the table that's different from everyone else? And that's often what builds it. And when you bring those in, they often are like, oh, that's interesting. And then they have a follow-up question. That's how you really get them involved and interested and remembering you when the interview's done.
Love that. Shreya, take it away.
Yeah, totally agree with John. I'll say 3 things. 1, please show your personality. I think it's very important to do that during the case interview as well, and not just be nervous and reciting frameworks. Remember to be structured throughout the case, not just the initial framework. And then 3, I think to John's point, it's pretty important to bring in personal experiences, because it kind of shows your interviewer that you can connect the dots and you have an interesting personality that is truly understanding the problem and thinking from your actual experiences, as opposed to other candidates.
Well, I will share one that's somewhat unique, just building on what the other panelists have already said. From my experience interviewing folks while I was at Bain, in my estimate, 80% of people get at least one piece of the math very wrong. And that actually makes the math a great opportunity to stand out if you can get it right. And so I always tell folks, go as slow as you need to get the math right, because if you do, you will stand out head and shoulders above everyone else.
I guess I would just add here, I thought that was a really interesting one, actually. And it actually brought me back to my final round interview, where we were doing this entire analysis. And so the point here is, I think, don't be afraid to make mistakes and even get things wrong within the interview. But it reminded me because I was walking through my analysis, and it was about boxes and shipments and stuff like that. And I started calculating volume and figuring out how much could fit in. And actually it was a question about boxes themselves and shipping boxes. And so it's actually not a volumetric calculation. You have to calculate surface area. And going through that process and messing it up in real time and then coming back around and figuring out the answer together actually helped me kind of stand out in the way of I can get something wrong and then we can work together to figure it out. And also standing out, I guess, by the fact that the actual math portion, going well in the end and getting it wrong, but then actually getting it right. So anyway.
Love that. Lola, bring us home.
Yeah, I had a very similar experience to Ben, so just a +1 on that front. I would say that one thing to call out is just being really intentional about drawing out the so what throughout the interview process. So when you come to a figure or a chart that they show you, or they give you some qualitative data, you should be very aggressively telling the person why it matters, not only what it says. I found that a lot of people I've interviewed will just give me a descriptive read of the data, but not actually tell me how it affects the problem we're trying to solve or push it forward. So if the interviewer doesn't have to nudge you to do that, I think that gives you a bit of a highlight.
Love that. That's an awesome answer. And we'll be double clicking on a lot of the things each of you said today. And especially in the workshops, I know that we'll cover these things as well. So thanks for getting us started. Now we have 10 minutes to go through the rest of the questions, and let's dive in. Okay, I want to ask you, Jeremy, what's the best way to prep for case interviews? I know we talked about nailing them and getting them right, but let's say you're in your undergrad, you're at WashU, back at it again with Ben, case prepping. What did that process look like, and how can you help those on this call who are aspiring consultants?
Yeah, so there are a few things that I would share. First one is that there are 2 types of practice that I would make sure that you are engaging in. The first type is getting feedback from somebody who has experience and knows exactly what the interviewers are looking for at these firms. So the panelists here tonight, or other folks on Leland, or other people who have been in the interviewer's seat, that's critical. Obviously, to do that every time is a stretch because there aren't as many opportunities for that. So that's where case buddies come in, people from your consulting clubs at school, friends. If a parent wants to help you, this isn't something that, in order to get reps, you don't need to get the perfect feedback every time, but you do need a lot of reps. So those are the two big things that I would say. The other way that I would add on to that is that a lot of these cases can be further broken down. So Ben obviously shared up front how there are 5 core skills. You can segment those out and start to practice them individually. So some of those skills in there are creating a market size. That's something that you can just do by yourself. You can also work on building rapport by simply talking with a friend about a business problem. Doesn't have to even be in the context of a case. So figure out what the key skills are and start to work on those individually.
Awesome. That's great. Yeah. And I echo everything you say. I think getting that live practice, structuring all of that is super important. So thanks for sharing that. I'm sure that was, with people coming in from these college clubs on the call tonight, they're wondering that exact thing. How do they get started? Let's move it on to the next one. Established frameworks versus custom structures. Which is better? Lola, I'll pass this one over to you to answer.
Cool. So when I was first preparing for case interviews, there's this book called Embrace the Case that everyone on campus had to prepare for these interviews. And it had a bunch of these frameworks. There's like 6 different types of cases you could ever get. And you were just supposed to memorize them and like everything would be okay. I think those days are very much long gone. I think most of the interviews that you'll get from the top firms today will be much more custom, have many different types of problems within the same case, and will sort of not fit into a rigid framework. I think frameworks can give you language. They can give you words to use to sort of guide your thinking in the interview. So like, what's a break-even point? Like, we know profit equals revenue minus costs. We know organic growth versus inorganic growth. So those are things that you'll learn from the frameworks, but in and of themselves, the frameworks will not get you to an offer. I think having the language in your back pocket is very important, but you really want to move towards a more flexible way of thinking about these problems, and you're thinking through things in a very structured and logical way and communicating with the interviewer how you're thinking about things, but you're not really adhering to a specific like M&A growth strategy framework or like P&L growth framework that people might have been doing, in the last like 15 years. So I really think thinking about this in terms of like structured problem solving rather than a framework I need to memorize will be really advantageous.
Yeah, that's an awesome answer. Ben, I know that you and Shreya both are going to cover these in your breakout rooms in a moment, but anything you'd add to this?
Yeah, I mean, I guess insofar as you think these interviews are supposed to be hard, like, why would they ever give you anything that's like memorizable that you could just walk in and have a distinct advantage over the rest of the people applying? Like, they would never design a system that way. And so insofar as they'd never design a system that way, you have no choice but to design custom frameworks on the fly. I think the other thing to remember here is like, it seems kind of really hard at first. If I were to recall, like my first few times doing a case, it just got wrecked. But I think going through it over time, like a lot of live practice gets you comfortable, just like moving between the dynamism. And maybe it's this, you start to learn heuristics like inorganic versus organic, or like, here are the types of things I want to think about when I enter a new market. Like those types of things become like more familiar to you, the same way that dribbling a basketball and taking a bunch of shots each day would just get you more familiar with moving with the ball. So I think designing custom frameworks and being ready to be dynamic and flexible, and frankly, your interviewer might hate one of the parts of your framework, and like revising it on the fly and just not being wedded to anything. Like all those things build a flexibility. And again, largely through live practice is how kind of I put this together.
Awesome. Thanks so much. John, let's pass the next one over to you. I think each of you have kind of talked about like the rapport building and delivering the answers and all of that throughout the process, but how can candidates effectively communicate what they're thinking and finding during a case interview?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's definitely a balance between being confident and sort of humble, but definitely I would say err on the side of being confident. The humble part is just, you don't want to come off as like a total jerk that no one would want to work with. You want to be confident, but then you want to sort of be checking in as you go with, I think this is the best approach, or like, I did this math and this is the answer I got. And the next thing this means is it's relevant to the rest of the case that we've been doing, because so when you're communicating, be confident and always be tying it back to the whole point of the case. You'll remember each case basically starts with a question of, the client is looking to decide XYZ. You always want to be thinking through your initial framework and how what you're doing answers that question. And so to the extent you can always be tying that back in your communications, you'll be showing that you have a clear sort of level head of driving to the answer. But be confident, not overconfident, but I will say, like, in the clients I work with, that's almost never the problem. There's one or two every once in a while where you get, okay, you want to tone it back a little bit. By and large, be confident more than you think is comfortable or natural to you.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Shreya, anything you'd add here in terms of that delivery and communication element?
I think I would echo a lot of what John said. It's very, very important to come across confident, but there is a balance between coming across a little too confident, because it's very easy for interviewers to catch that. Kind of goes back to my point of like, show your personality, right? Like they really do want to see that through the case interview. And so, yeah, just be confident, be yourself. And that's how they would want to hear your recommendations and processes and findings. They really just want to hear your thoughts. You're smart. Share your thoughts.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Lola, I know you tapped on this as part of your original best tip. Anything you'd add here about communicating your processes and findings?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would underscore is how important it is to be structured and sort of provide guideposts to the interviewer about where you're going. Sometimes it can sound unnatural to be like, I'm going to talk about 3 things. The first is this, the second is this, the third is this. But the interviewer is like looking for that level of structure and sort of top-down communication to make sure that they can follow your thinking. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Jeremy, I'll pass this one over to you. We've talked a bit about math, and your original tip was about getting the math right and, shining through that. But obviously there are a lot of assumptions being made throughout the case. How can you advise our audience today on that element of the process?
Yeah, for sure. So the first thing that I would think about here is that making assumptions, and really, honestly, the case overall, is more about how you do it than the answer you get. And so it's similar with assumptions. What the interviews are going to be looking for here is this assumption that the interviewee made defensible? Does it make sense? Do I understand why they picked this number? If they feel like it's random or not defensible, that's not the type of thing that will instill confidence in the answer you eventually get to. So I'd make sure there's rationale behind it. The second thing is, I would, when making assumptions, the way you communicate it is also important. So you might come up to an instance where you're not sure whether they have this data for you or you need to make an assumption. So there's language you can use that can make this process easier, which is, I'm happy to make an assumption around this number, but first I want to check to see, do we happen to know the growth rate of this market? So what you're doing is you're not getting too far out ahead of the interviewer, where basically you would just be like, I'm going to assume these 20 things, and then they're going to be like, oh, I actually have that information. You don't want that to happen. So it's a balance between asking for what you want and just making an assumption.
Awesome. Love that. Let's go over to the next one. Ben, I would love to hear what you have to say here. I know that you worked in the interview process and led recruiting for the Midwest. So let's hear, what are some common mistakes you've seen? I guess that would just mean like flipping all the good qualities that you've all advised. What are some common mistakes and how can they be avoided?
Yeah, I feel like we've hit on a bunch. The first common mistake is to not practice live enough. So in the preparatory get reps, like practice with someone who cares about you live. So I think that's a huge thing that leads up to the actual day of the interviews. I was raised this way, and not everybody was, but being really polite to everybody in the building matters a lot. These are things that you do. I guess this is the interview process in general, so I'm getting a little far afield. I think within the cases, I would probably just say when you're challenged, your ability to stick up through the process and maintain a level of hey, this is a dialogue. We're trying to really, like think together here. I think trying to be like, when you start to see it as a conflict as opposed to like a rightful challenge, like your client, if you're ever going to work for them, public, private, doesn't matter. Like they're going to be questioning your thinking at every single stage. There may be people in the company that don't even want you there. So you have to work really hard in order to actually establish kind of that rapport, but also like walking people through things. So I think leaving the element of a dialogue and a structured conversation to get to the right answer in a collaborative way, even when you feel pressured or challenged, I think that's a pretty big one. I think the last thing is just related, just like, again, mistakes happen. And I think your recovery speaks a lot more to how well you perform on the job than it does the fact that you fail a certain percentage of the time. So I'll leave it there, but I'm sure there's plenty of things I missed. There's so much to talk about on this one.
Awesome. Well, okay, we'd love to wrap it up. I know we've covered a lot in terms of tips and best practices, and we will have time in the breakout rooms for actual workshopping and practice, but any panelist have any final word they want to leave the audience with? If you want to just give one line each, we can go in that same order. Take it away, John.
I just say practice casing until at least you enjoy it. Because if you're not enjoying it, you're probably not going to come across confident, enjoyable, like someone they want to work with, etc. And if you are enjoying it, it's a really good sign. It means you're probably understanding things and doing it right, and also going to be able to come across in the right way.
Love it. Shreya.
Yeah, I think echo that again. The mistakes piece is on my mind right now. So I'll just say related to math. One final tip would be don't try to get the exact answer. They do not care about 0.3456. They care about a directional answer. So like round up your numbers and talk through your math. I think we're very used to doing math silently, but it's very important for interviewers to see you do the math and talk to them as if they were a baby.
Jeremy.
This whole thing is not that complicated. They're looking to make sure that you can walk through a real life business problem and that they can put you in front of a client. So just get reps, get high quality feedback, and you will be good to go.
Awesome. Ben, and then Lola. Muted. Unmute.
Sorry, guys. I still have the technological capabilities of 4 generations early. So my main thing is like, don't forget there's an entire additional interview other than the case. Like, this is about the consulting interview process. The behavioral interview for many firms counts as half, and it is still a significant fraction. You can't fall flat there, but also like it's an awesome way to like get to know the people that you're going to work with. And certain processes have very, very deep interviews. So for me, at least, having the behavioral first, I ended up in such a good place that I felt, I guess, as confident as I ever had doing cases. So use it as another weapon in your arsenal to end up doing well in the case.
Awesome. Lola, take it away.
Yeah, I think I would say just stay calm and stay measured in the moment. Like if you think that you're making a mistake, if the case is like actually really confusing, don't forget about like all of the things you've worked hard to sort of train yourself on. Don't just like jump into answers with no structure. Don't just go quiet. Like if you're in a moment of panic, like let the interviewer know that, oh, I'm actually not sure if this makes sense. Can you validate this? And they'll help you. Like you just need to sort of voice what's happening throughout the process. So stay calm, stay measured, and ask for help.
Love that. Y'all are incredible. If we can give a round of applause and some thank yous in the chat. These panelists have been exceptional. I know I learned a lot. I'm like, should I go do a case interview practice with one of them? Because I think this is a great skill to learn. So thank you, each of you. And as mentioned, the breakout rooms are coming right up, which will be a great place for you to learn in a more workshopy setting. So with that, thank you to each of our panelists. And I will plug this $25 credit one more time. If you want to scan it, go get that credit, book time with these coaches. They have helped hundreds of people break into big 3 consulting firms, big 4 boutique consulting firms, and they are ready and excited to work with each of you, which is why they are here tonight. So with that, let's move over to breakout rooms. We will have 5 rooms, all covering different subjects. Amelia will go ahead and assign you to each room, but if there's a room you'd prefer to be in, you can jump in once you're there. And please be respectful of the coaches. There are going to be several of you in each of their rooms. So use the chat to ask questions, be respectful of the other people in the room, and make sure to express gratitude as they put a lot of time into preparing what these breakout sessions look like. So with that, thank you again, everyone, for being here. Join Leland. We're here to help. We want to help you get that job in management consulting. And with that, Amelia, let's break into breakout rooms and get that workshop started.